Hi, welcome to the Trauma Thrivers podcast. Delighted to have you with us. I'm Lula Bentz, your host, a psychotherapist, a trauma expert, and a survivor myself. Lovely to have you with us. The Trauma Thrivers podcast is for anybody who has been through any sort of developmental trauma or who has complex PTSD. This podcast aims to help educate, inspire, and support those of us that are on a trauma healing journey. We've got stories, steps, and various solutions to trauma to help you heal. If you'd like more information or tips or tools or strategies, please go to traumathrivers.com. You can also find this podcast on my YouTube channel, Lula Bentz Trauma Thrivers. If you'd like to join our community of thrivers, please find us on Facebook under Trauma Thrivers. Chiron Clinics proudly sponsors the Trauma Thrivers podcast. Chiron Clinics offer residential and outpatient treatment for anyone trying to recover from the effects of trauma. Chiron's clinics look through the lens of trauma to treat common mental health problems and behavioural disorders, which can lead to self-harming, addictions, depression, anxiety, and relationship issues. All treatment protocols used at Chiron Clinics use the latest research on trauma in the brain as a guide, and the combination can be highly effective in restoring nervous system regulation. For more information, see chironclinics.com. Welcome to the Trauma Thrivers podcast. Today's guest is going to talk about his alcohol addiction and how he quit not only his addiction, but he wrote this brilliant book, How to Quit Alcohol in 50 Days. My guest is Simon Chapple, and he's a certified sobriety coach, speaker, and also now a best-selling author. Since Simon became sober, it's become his mission to raise awareness around the dangers of alcohol. And at his worst, he was drinking at least 3 bottles of red wine a day. He runs one of the largest Facebook sobriety communities and is now working on his second book already about helping people who have suffered childhood trauma and neglect, which is due out in late 2021. I'm going to ask him how he's realised, of course, the link between his addiction and his childhood trauma. But I'd just like to say thank you to you all for tuning in. So today I am delighted to introduce Simon, who I've already introduced and built up to share his story a little bit to start with, hopefully. And how did you quit drinking, Simon?
Thanks for having me on, Lou.
Oh, pleasure.
It's great to be here. But yeah, quitting drinking was something that was a real challenge for me. I mean, I'd drunk heavily for over 20 years, and I was drinking anything from 1 to 3 bottles of red wine every day. Wow. Often I was drinking beer, spirits on top. And I spent about 5 years before I quit in this place where I had internal conflict. You know, part of me the seed had been planted that I was drinking too much and I was harming myself. Yet my subconscious just wanted to carry on with the same old habits and keep me stuck where I was. And it was like this washing machine of thoughts spinning around in my head. And I would drink more to try and silence the thoughts. Yeah. And every time I tried to quit, it pulled me straight back again. And I sort of stayed in this place of discomfort for around 5 years before I actually managed to stop drinking. And it was really through self-education, getting motivated. I think mindset is such a huge part of it, as it is with anything around sort of trauma work, addiction work, just sort of feeling like I'm going to gain something from this. I'm not losing anything, although it might feel hard to get to that place. There's some real gifts when you get there. And I've had a real sort of motivated, almost excited mindset, like I was jumping into a new hobby or something like that. And that's how it felt for me. But a lot of it was about educating, connecting with people, making sure I had the right support, journaling everything, paying attention to what was going on, and having sort of tactics and tools in place, really.
Okay. And did you use any of the fellowship or anything like that in your journey?
No, I've got quite I was going to say a modern approach, but well, I suppose it is, or a different approach,
Yeah.
with my own coaching and the work that I do now. And so much of what I did was around connecting with groups on Facebook, support groups
Okay.
there, just like your group for trauma,
Yeah.
and meeting people who are on the same journey, the same path, and connecting with them and feeling like I'm not alone in this. It was
Yeah.
just so important and powerful to me. But I've never been to an AA meeting. I've never been to
Wow. Yeah.
any of those things. Some of my friends have got a lot out of them, but
Yeah. For you, it was a different way.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So when did you realize that there was some trauma underneath the addiction?
Well, this is an interesting one because so many people I work with, and I work in some big groups for This Naked Mind, which is a big, mostly American organization that helps people quit drinking. So I'm often in groups with several thousand people and I coach in those. And trauma's not talked about too much in the sober and addiction space, and which I find strange, and we can touch on that a little bit more. But many people quit drinking and they go through this initial period of discomfort, cravings, emotional instability, and then they start to feel really happy and more peaceful and calmer, and which I absolutely did.
Yes.
But several months in, it was as if this mask had come off and I felt kind of naked in the world, metaphorically. And I, I could no longer not look in the mirror at this person. And there still was this kind of void that existed within me. I still knew I wasn't really feeling feelings. I still didn't cry at things. I didn't get
Yes.
angry about stuff.
So you were a bit numb and a bit dissociated.
I'd say more than a bit, massively, yeah. And there were other things going on, like certain narcissistic traits, and generally being unconscious in everything I was doing in my life,
Yeah.
and doing things from an ego perspective rather than actually what was good for me. And there was no sort of self-love practice going on,
Yeah.
or kind of kindness to me. And I always use 3 words when I talk to people in coaching, and it's because it applied to me, and I think it just resonates with so many people. Not good enough. And that was just how I felt, not good enough. So, and it was probably around maybe about the 6-month stage that I started to realize that, yes, I've taken this huge step. I've quit drinking. There's more to this. I feel like initially I thought alcohol was the problem. It was the cause. And I started to realize, actually, I've chopped off some branches of this tree, but I haven't ripped up the roots of it. And I now need to dig into the roots. And that was what I started doing sort of midway through the first year sober.
Okay. And interestingly, going towards the void, I guess the first thing that we need to do, those of us in recovery, is to be able to not numb the feelings and not be dissociated, and get back into the body and learn to be with our feelings and not numb them out. So how did you do that? How did you start to name them and all of those things?
Yeah. And again, I suppose one of the beautiful things about sobriety is that you become so much more self-aware. And I always say to the people I work with that, quitting drinking gives you the foundation to build this new happy life. I don't think you can resolve trauma if you're drinking every single day. You're just not in the right headspace to do it. I certainly couldn't have anyway. And it was very much when I started I continued to educate myself, and I sort of transitioned from reading sober books to reading self-help books, and was just learning more and more and noticing things that really connected with me. And I was reading books and saying, well, yeah, that's me. That's what's happened to me. That was my life. And and I just started to actually label the feelings. I just used an emotion wheel that I found online. I'm sure you've seen them. And
they're brilliant. In fact, I still use them with clients.
They're so good. And someone actually gave me some cards. I was just looking for them, which actually named the emotions as well. So that was kind of how I started. And when you start doing it, it just becomes a new habit of saying, well, that's anger, that's fear, that's rage, or, you know, whatever, sadness. But it took a while to start really connecting with them. I mean, anger, I still don't really get angry. I'm working on that one. I'm getting there.
Yet.
Yeah, I will. I'd encourage anyone to make me angry. Please do it.
I'll try not to today, Simon. I'll try not to. And when did you realise that kind of connected back some of those feelings to earlier, obviously, childhood and family of origin? I'm guessing is where the trauma lay or lies.
So the more I started looking at it, the more obvious it was becoming that I didn't have a very good childhood. And interestingly, so I was sexually abused when I was 13 by an older boy, and I didn't tell anyone about it until I was 40 years old. And I was talking to a good friend, actually, who she runs another podcast, and she gave me some. She was telling me how she spoke more openly about her own trauma and how much lighter it made her feel. Yeah, and this was very much in an early stage of my journey. And I told my wife about it, and I thought, yeah, okay, I feel a bit better about it. But I run quite a big YouTube channel, and the more I kind of paid attention to this and thought, actually, I'm gonna share it. I'm gonna talk about it. So I did on my YouTube, and I had so many people, particularly men, connecting with me who've suffered similar issues, and that was really when I started not only to connect with my own past, but actually talking to other people, offering my thoughts to other people and helping them. And then there were some great books that I read, actually, that really drew me to the type of parents that I had. Like, my father abandoned my mother and I when I was 2 years old. I didn't even realize I had issues around rejection and abandonment, yet I would get emotionally triggered if I was in Starbucks and the person behind the till ignored me, because she was rejecting me.
Yes.
It was that bad.
Absolutely. Sure. Wow.
It was incredible. And then, and unfortunately, my mother was emotionally absent. So she would rarely hug me or show me sort of the love, compassion, care that I needed. So there were all these things at play that went on. But I feel it was just a gradual process. It was a bit like incremental gains every few days. I would just notice it a bit more. The more awareness I paid to it, the more I began to feel it. And I use a really corny phrase with people, which is, when you're aware, you're halfway there. But it just feels so true to me.
Yeah, but I love it. I think that's so true, because without awareness, what have we got? And particularly with addiction and trauma, and I'm of the belief that underneath all addiction sits trauma or neglect or abuse or something. Otherwise, why would we become addicts or addicted? I think a huge step of that denial or dissociation, as I prefer to call it, is you actually getting really honest with yourself, and in that honesty, being really honest and open with other people. And I mean, sharing about that experience at 13, the sense of shame lessens, doesn't it, when you can be honest, and also you lessen other people's shame.
Yeah, precisely. When I started receiving messages from people sort of saying, thank you for sharing this. I mean, the day I shared it, I had a message from a lady saying she was, within minutes of this video going out, saying she was sat outside the school gates waiting to pick her son up in tears, and she'd never told anybody that she had suffered something similar, and I was the first person she'd ever told about it. And it literally blew me away. And that video sort of gets those sort of comments regularly now.
Good. Yeah. because we can't sit in silence.
No, we got to shine a light on it, or it just stays in a very dark, horrible place.
Exactly. So, so true. So I know you're a great believer in something you call radical honesty. Can you share a bit more about that?
I've always been very honest, and I think I've always overshared with people. So I've worked on that, and I think a lot of that probably came from the abandonment issues and wanting people to not leave.
Yeah, please, maybe like other like you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, almost like the more I let you in, the more you'll stay with me, the more you'll be my friend. So I think there was always this foundation of honesty. But however, when I started to look much closer at myself, I realized actually, no, there's times when not only are you not honest to others, you're not honest to yourself. And I really started to work on this almost non-negotiable commitment with myself, that I would be completely honest no matter how hard it was. Because as with many people who suffer trauma and emotional neglect, I was a massive people pleaser. I couldn't say no, and I ran a mile from conflict. And I've been pushing myself in those areas to actually, face up to these things. And do you know, the honesty piece has been one of the best things I've ever done. Being able to just say it like it is, and just be true in every situation. Sure, sometimes it's hard, and the main kind of rules I give myself are not to be brutal to other people, to where you actually would upset someone or be unnecessarily mean to somebody, but always looking after yourself. And also just really kind of thinking before I speak and considering any consequences, and knowing that you can still be honest without telling everyone everything. If somebody said to me, well, tell me your innermost secrets, I can still be honest by saying it's not appropriate for me to talk to you about that. I don't have to share everything with everyone. So it doesn't mean that.
Yeah. So it's being honest, but still maintaining some boundaries.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And particularly with my mother, it's been a godsend, because I've been able to have some incredibly open conversations with her, share with her about how I feel about my childhood, and I've been able to set boundaries, and that is so powerful. I mean, a few years ago, I didn't know what a boundary was. I didn't have any.
Yeah. So radical honesty, setting boundaries, trying not to people please so much, not being so conflict avoidant. What other, I don't know, tools or tips or strategies would you want to give to anybody listening who's either trying to put down their drinking, but might underneath, I mean, would you take it in stages? Would you say, look at your drinking first, put down the plaster before you deal with the wound, and then look at the wound?
Yeah, I absolutely would. So I run a big Facebook sober community, and same on Instagram. And I really think, if with any addiction, to be honest, no matter what it is, I think in order to really get a handle on the work around getting unstuck from our past, the trauma, the neglect, you want to try and get a handle on any sort of addictive behavior, particularly alcohol and drugs. And I think quitting drinking, it just gets you in that right mindset, that right sort of peaceful, calm place where you're no longer fazed by things that used to cause a massive meltdown. So the triggers aren't quite so strong, I guess, is the easiest way of putting it. So yeah, I absolutely would do that. And the great place to start with everything, I think, is education. This whole journey for me started with picking up a book and just getting curious and approaching it.
Can you remember what that book was, Simon?
Yeah, the first quit drinking book was This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, who I now work for. And she actually, she actually wrote the foreword on my first book. So this is This Naked Mind.
Amazing, great, okay, fab. And you're right, isn't it? It just takes that first book, or that first inspiration, or that first bit of hope even, that things can be different and can be, as both of us would say, so much better without alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that's what I do as a full-time job, is help people quit drinking. And if people could see what they gain from quitting drinking, if you actually knew that and could feel it and see it from the start, it wouldn't feel hard to quit, because you would realize how much better life is. You're a better parent, a better partner, a better employee or business owner, or whatever it may be. Everything improves, but unfortunately you can't see it, and you almost have to take this leap of faith and go through some difficult stuff at the beginning to get there, but it is so worth it.
Yeah. And what tools are you using now yourself? Because let's say it's a lifelong journey, isn't it? We're always learning, and there are different layers and different lessons. And, you know, I for one, haven't reached full enlightenment yet, and I don't know whether I will do in this lifetime. So we're always learning and building. What processes or strategies or things are you doing now to work on the trauma?
In terms of the trauma, I still do one-to-one therapy every single week, and spend a lot of time exploring things. I mean, therapy has been amazing, but it's important to find the right therapist.
Yes.
And I really took my time. I'd been through quite a few therapists previously, but none of them had experienced the same issues I had. And I thought about it from the perspective of somebody who's a sobriety coach. I wouldn't want to work with a sobriety coach who had never drunk in their life. I'd want someone who actually understood how hard it feels to deal with a craving, who gets it. So that was a real game changer for me. And I'm part of a men's group. We're meeting tonight, every Wednesday night. There's 6 of us in there, and there's no egos. We share everything. I've managed to let go of every single secret I've ever had in there. So
Lovely.
I've got no shame about anything, and hopefully
Lovely.
not much lurking in my shadow.
Yes.
So it's just been, I think men's therapy groups and women's therapy groups are so powerful.
Yeah.
And there's things as well, like the Mankind Project and weekends. There's ones for women as well that people can go on to connect. So I do a lot of reading, just self-help books, and I'll pick up little bits from them, and I'll watch a lot of videos, and just equally hearing other people's stories. So the people in my Facebook groups and in my program where we connect on Zoom and on live sessions, just hearing their stories and understanding how things are for them, and often hearing how people have got themselves to a better place. That alone, that connection, I think, is massive. And being accountable, obviously writing books and coaching and things, that makes me accountable. So it helps.
Yeah, it does. It does. And for you, the rest of this year or 2021, what's in store for you? What are you hoping to bring to the world?
Well, it's been a funny year with the pandemic and everything. And I launched a quit drinking program in May, which is going really well. The new book, which I think you got a copy of.
I have. Look, we can do a double whammy.
Yeah, double whammy. A lot of sort of work has gone into the build up and the launch. And then there's 2 other projects on the go. There's a sober life stories book that I'm putting together, which hopefully will be out sometime next year. And I'm writing a book around healing childhood emotional neglect, which I'm doing sort of in collaboration with someone else. So which that looks to be quite an interesting project as well. So
I'm sure that would be great for the Trauma Thrivers audience. And
yeah, absolutely. I think it will. I've had a few people read the manuscript, and the feedback's been really good. But I'm not a therapist. It's what I've learned on the journey. But I feel like I've all that stuff I went through at the start of my life, I feel like it's payback time now.
It totally is payback time, and it's wonderful that you've learned all these lessons, and you've got these stories, and you've got these things going on, and you're helping so many other people too with their journeys. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it, for both of us? I know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, likewise, your group's just is amazing in terms of a space where people can connect and feel safe without judgment, without any fear of being able to express themselves. I think having a safe space is so important, and being able to connect in that is just a wonderful thing.
I agree. So Simon, thank you for sharing your time with us today and some of your story. And I presume the whole version is in here for people to read a bit more about you. And the website that they should go to is?
My website's besober.co.uk.
Okay. And you're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube?
All the usual places, yeah.
All right, lovely. They can come and find you. Thank you, Simon. So lovely to meet you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on. It's been awesome.
Oh, it's been brilliant. Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope it helped you in some way, and I really hope to see you back here soon. If you have anything to share on today's experience or podcast, please nip over to the YouTube channel or the Facebook group Trauma Thrivers and let us know there.